Well, hello again, everyone. This is Radio Entrepreneurs, and we've been working diligently to continue to inform our listeners on how people are dealing with the COVID, going back to work, protecting the economy, and keeping everybody employed. And we really appreciate all the listeners and the new people tuning into the show. As people have noticed, we've had these segments over the last few weeks. If we're looking at protecting the economy and limiting the damage that's being done right now, I really mean this sincerely. I can't think of a better person that I have ever met in my career than speaking with Marcia Wagner, owner of the Wagner Law Group, 7 or 8 offices across the United States. But welcome back, Marcia. Great to see you. You look very healthy, which is also the most important.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Jeffrey. Great to see you.
You know, Marcia, we talked on the phone the other day. You gave me a call very nicely, unsolicited, and as usual, you went into one of your discussions with me about some of your concerns. Could you share that with our listeners? Because I always feel you're so relevant.
Well, thank you for saying that. That means a lot to me. My main concern, I have so many, but they all boil down to one, that when a society is under stress, you start to see the cracks. You start to see the issues that were papered over or didn't have to be dealt with. And right now, our societal cracks or flaws or weaknesses are becoming very apparent. I mean, on the macro level, you see what the effect of inequality is. If one person is sick, be they rich or poor, they can infect many. You see the flaws in our healthcare delivery. You see the flaws in our supply delivery. You see our flaws societally. Government is trying through the PPP to get money to small business with, at this point, really horribly repugnant effect. It's not working. It's not working well. It's not working efficiently. It's almost to tantalize small businesses with this potentiality of much needed money and then make it an obstacle course to get through, and very few can get through, is repugnant. And I think that you're starting to see that we have real flaws in our society. Now, I happen to be an expert in the pension system and the welfare benefit system, the system of benefits in our country. And we have similar flaws because the entire society is seeing where our weaknesses are. And we have the chance to rectify them. Because it's never too late. Where there's life, there's hope. The problem is the longer we go, in a patchwork sort of way or a whack-a-mole sort of way, the more these problems are going to increase, and the more tensions within our society and even outside of our society are going to be exacerbated. But with respect to pension plans, one of the big weaknesses that I'd like to discuss is cyber theft. This is becoming a huge issue in the pension marketplace. So for example, and this was a real case, the Abbott Laboratories case, and it's happening, my understanding, at least anecdotally from the record keepers, is that it's happening all the time, whereby there's identity theft and someone gets their 401k account balance literally stolen, brought down to zero. So what do we as a society do about that? Who's responsible? Who holds the bag? What do the laws say on this? It's a very important issue. You hear about cyber theft of identities, but for whatever reason, and I'm not quite sure why, there isn't a lot of discussion about cyber theft of 401k assets and how they get recontributed, if at all. So there are many players with much responsibility. And I think we need law and policy and the Department of Labor or someone to issue FAQs to help, to show people what the standards are to protect and what people need to do.
You know, I've got a personal belief that America has always been slow to mobilize for crises through our history. The First World War, Second World War, 9/11, all these different things, but that we are a strong grassroots country, and that when movements do start, they start from the grassroots, and that's where our mobilization happens. So if I'm somewhat correct, with cyber theft, how can our listeners mobilize themselves to make sure that the proper groups are doing something about this? Because I know, the squeaky wheel gets greased.
The squeaky wheel gets greased. But what if it doesn't need grease? What if it needs a new axle? I think we have to diagnose the problem first. So let's break it down. Who are the different parties involved in cyber theft? Well, there's clearly the thief. There is the record keeper. So for example, if your account is with Fidelity is a record keeper, or with Voya, or with Empower, or Principal, or Prudential, or whomever. They're the record keeper. How are they protecting this information? How are they protecting account balances? There's the plan sponsor. When the plan sponsor hires a record keeper, is the plan sponsor looking at the cyber policies? Are they looking at protection from theft? There's a plan participant. Is the plan participant giving away his or her information willy-nilly, or are they protecting it appropriately? Have they been informed by their employer what they should do to protect their information? And then there's the government. Why do we have no real data other than that which is anecdotal with respect to how often record keepers are dealing with cyber theft? So, and then there's the federal law and the state law. ERISA, the federal law that governs pension plans, requires all fiduciaries to plans to behave prudently. Well, if you're an employer, wouldn't prudence demand that you're at least aware as to what your provider says about 401k assets being protected? So for example, if Joe Schmo's Pizza Parlor is hacked in some way and their employees' assets are dissipated entirely, is Joe responsible? Is Fidelity responsible? Are the participants responsible? And Joe and Joe's advisor really have to understand what the limits are of the record keeper's responsibility, what guarantees there might be, whether insurance can cover this. Is the fiduciary bonded for theft? If not, why not? What does the Department of Labor have to say with responsibility? And also, at the end of the day, Jane Smith of Joe's Pizza wants her money back. Who's going to give it to her? Who's legally responsible? These are really important issues right now. And I'll tell you why, Jeffrey. Because right now, the entire world is living on cyber. Everything is being done
Everyone.
electronically. So there are more opportunities, unfortunately, for bad players to come into the fore. And that is anecdotally what's happening. So what are the best steps? What should we be doing? And I do have some thoughts on that if you'd like to hear them.
Yeah, that's what I want. I'd like the Marcia Wagner prescription for solution.
Great. One thing they say about lawyers, and I am a lawyer, is many of us come up with many questions, but very few solutions. That doesn't work for me. I think if you're going to come up with a problem, you need to come up with a solution, because it's wrong not to. And in this time, we have to do what's right. If we don't, no one will. That is your grassroots point.
Right.
So, plan participants, they need to be careful with their information. They can't share it with anyone. They can't share their login number, their password. Oftentimes their user name, their user ID is their name. So my user name would be maybe defaulted to Marcia Wagner. Well, any hacker can figure that out. Or Marcia Wagner 1 or something like that. It's silly. So have a username that's not easily hackable. Have a password that's not easily hackable. And be careful. Employers, you have a responsibility to deal with record keepers and providers and vendors that will protect plan assets. Well, what are plan assets? Plan assets is the money. They're going to protect the money. And do you have guarantees that they'll do so? Do you understand their security protocol? Have you even asked about their security protocol? Is there anything affirmatively you have to do to make sure that you do receive a guarantee? These are things that need to be asked of service providers. And if it's not done, it's somewhat negligent. So, and fiduciaries are held to a prudent standard that negligence negates. So employers really have to be careful. They should also look into the bonding requirements under ERISA and whether fiduciary liability insurance would be appropriate given a potential cost-benefit analysis. Record keepers have a huge responsibility here. They have to, they should probably utilize things like artificial intelligence. Like, does this seem wrong that this plan participant is calling and requesting a full distribution of his money? Has he or she ever done this before? How often do they go into their account? What type of personal questions can be asked to make sure that that really is them? There was one call center that allegedly said to Jane Doe, "Jane, please confirm you still live at 123 Main Street." So the thief said, "Of course I live at 123 Main Street." So the call center employees have to be trained better. I think maybe there should be consideration to placing limits on how much money can come out at what time. Does that go contrary to ERISA or the CARES Act? Maybe. But if it's protective, is that a reasonable precaution to take given where the law stands now? And who's liable? If there's a breach, who should be notified of the breach? If one person has their assets stolen, does the employer have a responsibility to tell all employees, hey, listen, Jane Doe lost her money, be super careful. And this is what we're doing to make sure it doesn't happen again. Or we're freezing the plan until this doesn't happen again. Well, if you freeze the plan during a time of stock market volatility, what does that mean for account balances? And is there some fiduciary exposure where people would have gotten a higher rate of return had the plan not been frozen? So these are all issues that really have to be parsed out, and they're serious. It might sound like hyper-technical and theoretical until Jane Doe loses her money, and many Jane Does have been. And there really is no recourse at this point. So should the government step in? And which government is that? So the federal government regulates pensions, ... But insurance and criminal also can be regulated by the state. So we might have 50 different state laws that impose different types of liability. And do you really think a plan participant or a plan sponsor can figure their way out around this, given everything else going on? It's very, very difficult. And these are extremely serious questions. And they're even more serious, Jeff, because this entire system, the pension system, the 401k system in particular, but the pension system in general, is based on fiat, is based on faith. I will elect to defer receipt of a portion of my salary, 10% of my salary, knowing that it's secure in trust or in custody for 403B plan, and knowing that I can access it when I need to retire. What if that fiat, what if that faith is breached? And people start realizing, wait a second, this isn't secure. Maybe I should just have my money under a pillow.
Right.
So the industry itself has got to really come to the fore on cyber theft and not leave it merely in the hands of, Joe's Pizza Parlor or Jane Doe. They're not
MAGE, my consulting firm. I have employees that are listening to this right now. They have pensions. They rely upon their pensions. Who says that I'm not a target for some suspecting person?
But you might be.
And I know.
And who's your record keeper? What protections do they have? What if your pension is stolen? Will they make you whole? Do they commit to do that? In what time frame? With or without a rate of return? What process?
All very important.
What responsibilities do you, Jeff, have to make sure that whatever guarantee you may or may not have is effectuated if and when your assets are stolen? So these are really practical things that every business, particularly small business, who's more hackable than others, should really look into. This is very, very important, because when the faith breaks down, the pension system breaks down. I might add, by the way, that when faith breaks down in the greenback everything falls apart. But I'm talking about faith breaking down to a lesser degree. But it could well be a microcosm of a greater macrocosm.
Well, you always use up our time allotment, and I want to say, I think you put a challenge out to people like me, entrepreneurs, and our staff. But to me, as a leader of an organization, I have a responsibility to my people. My father taught me that. My responsibility is to reach out to my regional, state, and national leaders with my concerns, to point them to Marcia Wagner as a voice for all of us. I believe that. But to speak, to check my own security systems and protect my staff who are protecting me and protect my clients. So I appreciate your call to arms. As I said, I think it's a grassroots country. I really appreciate you taking the time out of, I know what is an immensely busy schedule, 7 days a week right now, protecting a lot of companies and a lot of people. And I so much look forward to your coming back and keeping us informed and mobilized through this crisis and through other potential cracks in the system, Marcia.
Thank you so much, Jeffrey. Stay well, be safe, and take care of yourself and your loved ones.
And connect with Marcia Wagner at the Wagner Law Group, and stay informed and stay well. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.